Hello and welcome, Katy here. Thanks so much for stopping by. I am back with another project for Imagine Crafts, and today I've got a Celtic Gilded thanks card for you. Now, this technique is really easy and it doesn't take very long to whip it up. And I'm using, like I said, some Imagine Echo products, but I will give you some other options throughout the video as we go along. That way you can use what you have if you don't have these specific products. So I'm going to use a couple all-purpose inks, white and Tropical Lagoon. I've got some Delicata Inks. I am going to pull in Silvery Shimmer as well. And I've also got a VersaFine Clair in Cheerful and some black cardstock. The die set I'm going to use for our sentiment. And then this is the 3D embossing folder from Sizzix and Tim Holtz. It is called Engrave. And then you need a sponge, just a kitchen sponge, but dried, and some scissors to cut little squares from. So I went ahead and spritzed the backside of my cardstock. I'm going to show you two ways to do this effect. So here's our first one embossed, and we're going to set that off to the side to dry since we got it wet. And now I'm going to start with the flat background. We're going to do one that's embossed already in Ink Up, and then we'll do this one here first by adding our ink and then embossing. So I've got some white ink. So this all-purpose ink is like a pigment ink, you know. So if you have a reinker, you could use that. If you have white acrylic paint, you could use that. The key here is that you're only using a little bit and you're using a sponge. The key to the sponge, you want to make sure it is dry. Do not get it wet, because your pigment ink or your ink, whatever ink you're using, is going to, or paint rather, is going to get the sponge wet enough. Okay, so dry sponge, important. So now I'm going to come in with my Tropical Lagoon. Now, you could use a pigment ink. So you can see I've got up there, then I showed you that we're going to use some VersaFine Clair. You could use those too. You don't have to use the all-purpose inks. Your VersaFine Clairs will work fine. The key to this is you've got a dark background and you need a white ink over top. Okay. And I wanted to try the all-purpose inks and I like the effect that I got. So that's why I went with those. But again, there's options. So now I'm coming in with my VersaFine Clair over top of my Tropical Lagoon. Now, the all-purpose ink, with the exception of, the white or even like the gold and stuff, it's very thin, very watery. So you really don't need a lot. In fact, there's way more on my sponge than I'll ever use. And then you're just swiping up and down, back and forth, putting as much white ink as you want on. And you need the white ink to get your colored ink to stand out. And I would have used a yellow all-purpose ink, but it's not opaque enough because it's watery. So that's why I came in with the VersaFine Clair. So you can use your pigment inks for this technique. You can use acrylic paint for this technique. Whatever you got, use it. Now, I just wanted to let those inks dry, very thin, so it doesn't take a long time. Now I'm going to run it through the embossing folder, and look at that. And when I did a little test swatch, and it looked almost metallic after I embossed, which I thought was really cool. So now we're going to come in with it already embossed. And again, coming in with that white ink, the all-purpose ink, again, a reinker, acrylic paint, all going to work. And now I'm coming over the top, and this looks really cool too. And what I want you to watch as I go through this is, as I add each layer of, when I start adding the Delicata ink, how much it changes the way that it looks. So now I'm going to come in with the Lagoon, the Tropical Lagoon over the top, and this looks great too. I always mention, not always, but sometimes I mention in the videos that as a creator, and I'm crafting and I'm doing and I'm filming, I don't always see every layer until I get to the editing stage. And then I say, oh, I should have left it like that because that looks really cool. Of course, that gives me ideas. I can go make it again and know where I can stop because I'm going to have a cool effect. But it's nice to go through all those stages, and you get to see those stages as well because it gives you more opportunity when you're crafting. So, just going through, and I'm adding the same colors, the white ink, the blue ink, and the yellow ink, okay? And blending it till I'm satisfied. And really, that's what it comes down to. This technique would be great on other dark cardstocks as well if you've got navy blue or dark brown. So keep that in mind. You're not just limited to black. But here's our backgrounds, and I just love them. So we're going to start off with I'm going to call it the painted background first with golden glitz, and I'm only using my finger. I'm not using a blender tool or foam or anything, just your finger. And the thing with the Delicata inks, you don't want to burnish, okay? You just want to kind of just slap it on, dip your finger in, rub, flick, get it on there, on all the raised surfaces. The Delicata ink is not like gilding wax. Okay, so if you have gilding wax, that's going to work here too. But it's not the same. With wax, you have to burnish it to get it to shine. The Delicata ink's already metallic and shiny, so you don't need to put a lot of effort into adding it to these backgrounds. And again, you're adding as much as you want to get the look and the effect that you want. Now, it's not quite as noticeable. I'm going to come in with Celestial Copper for this. The change that the background makes as it does with the one that's on the left right now that we're going to do here in a few minutes. But again, same thing, dipping my finger in. I did clean my fingers in between each color, but just taking my fingertip and rubbing it on quick. Again, we're not burnishing, we're not taking our time, we're just dipping it in and rubbing it a little bit on there just to get that ink transferred on. And then you set it off to the side to dry, and it's never going to come off. Once that pigment ink dries, you're good to go. And it doesn't take too long because, it's just a thin layer. And of course, you can add as much or as little as you want. Okay, now look at that. First, let's just admire that background there with the blue. I think that's really pretty. And I'm coming in with silver, the silvery shimmer Delicata ink. And this looks great too once you see it and I get the silver on there. But the reason I went with the silver on this one and not the first panel was because the first panel seemed to have a little bit more white, right? So I felt like it didn't need that extra, but it looks really cool, especially on this one, because I'm really trying to get it in the in-between spaces of the embossing to give the detail of that embossing folder. And of course, we're getting a little bit on the raised parts too. And I just love how this panel turned out. So, and this is what I'm talking about to follow as I place each color of Delicata ink on, because it really is going to change the way this background looks. So now coming in with the golden glitz, and I'm going to lay that over the top. And again, you don't want to burnish this. So just dip it in and rub it a little bit just to get the stuff off your finger and move on to the next part. And of course, you're adding as much as you want. You could stop at any time. Like I said, as I go through and I was editing, I was like, oh, I should have left it at that. But again, sometimes you're going with what's initially in your mind and not necessarily stopping because I'm in the middle of filming something. I've got to get it done. So once I get the golden glitz put on there, I will come in with the Celestial Copper. And you can see already the changes that are happening just by adding that gold over the silver. And just a little bit more. And now I'm going to come in with that Celestial Copper, and it really browns it up. And the transformation that takes place between all three of these colors with the Delicata ink, it just amazed me, honestly. And I'm in love with these. So I wasn't sure, we'll skip ahead a little bit as I'm doing this, how to decorate these, because as I was making them, and going through all this, I knew I didn't want to cover up the background. I kept it simple. You saw in the beginning photos because one, I need more masculine thank you cards, and not every guy wants to get flowers, on their thank you cards, right? But I wanted something Gothic and Celtic-y for St. Patrick's Day. And when I saw this, I just couldn't help but want to keep it. But I gotta have a sentiment. It's gotta be something on the front, right? But here's our finished panels. Look at how different they look from the beginning by adding on those layers of metallic ink. And your metallic inks, use whatever you got. If you don't have Delicatas, there's other companies that make metallic inks. Now, what I did was I coordinated. So I put that panel onto a craft background, and then our painted background I put on like a sea glass background because of the blue. And then using some VersaFine Claire Nocturne, used my sentiment strips coordinating with the back layers that I did. And I am just putting a piece of black cardstock as a backdrop for the sentiment. And then I've got some, twine. It's not baker's twine, but it's not the real rustic stuff either. But it's brown. And I thought it went really well with these. You can kind of see it wrapped up on that first one up there. And I needed to add a little hole punch. That's just like 1/8 of an inch hole punch there to be able to feed that through, that cord through. Double-sided adhesive because I need to be able to attach it to the back of the string once I get it wrapped around. And I've got double-sided adhesive on the back of our panel here. And now I'm just going to wrap this cord around 3 times. And, we're not machines here, so you're going to see that my 2 card panels the cording doesn't line up exactly. So, it is what it is. And then I will just line up my string, trying to get it as even as I can. I do want the front to be somewhat even, and off camera I do adjust them a little bit. Just because that top one wasn't quite lined up properly. But I'll get that double-sided adhesive off and then line it up onto our cord so that we have our thanks that goes right across there. Simple, nothing complicated, but look, I just love them. I'm in love with them. I'm going to make more of them because I love them that much. And I hope you do too. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Be sure and check the description box below for the products used. And don't forget, you can use anything. I'll list a couple examples in the description box below just to refresh your memory because I kind of talk quick through that stuff. But anything you can use to create this. You don't have to have these specific products. There's a lot of stuff out there that you can use to replicate this. But that wraps it up. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you in the next video.